Fatty Arbuckle. Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle was one of the biggest comedy stars of the silent film era, earning $1 million a year and working alongside legends like Buster Keaton. But in 1921, his career came crashing down in one of Hollywood's first major scandals. During a Labor Day party at the Street Francis Hotel in San Francisco, a young actress named Virginia Rapey became ill and died several days later from peritonitis caused by a ruptured bladder. Arbuckle was accused of assaulting and accidentally killing her during the party. The press had a field day, printing sensational and often false stories about what happened in that hotel room. Arbuckle faced 3 trials. The first 2 ended in hung juries, with jurors split on whether he was guilty. Finally, in the 3rd trial in April 1922, the jury took just 6 minutes to acquit him and even issued a written apology, stating that a great injustice had been done to him. Despite his acquittal, Hollywood banned Arbuckle from appearing on screen. His reputation was destroyed, and though he later worked behind the scenes under a pseudonym, he never regained his former glory. The case revealed how quickly the court of public opinion could destroy a career, even without a conviction. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn, the dashing Hollywood heartthrob known for playing swashbuckling heroes, faced statutory rape charges in 1942 that threatened to end his career. 2 teenage girls, Betty Hansen and Peggy Satterlee, accused Flynn of having sexual relations with them when they were underage. The trial became a media sensation, with every salacious detail splashed across newspapers. Flynn's lawyer, the legendary Jerry Giesler, mounted an aggressive defense that put the accusers' credibility on trial. He questioned their character, their stories, and their motives. The defense suggested the girls were seeking money and fame by targeting a wealthy movie star. After a lengthy trial, the jury found Flynn not guilty on all counts in February 1943. The case gave rise to the phrase, "in like Flynn," though its exact origins are debated. While Flynn's career survived, the trial exposed the darker side of Hollywood's golden age and raised questions about power dynamics between stars and young women in the industry. Flynn continued making films, but his reputation was forever tainted by the scandal. Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin, the beloved silent film icon, found himself in court multiple times, but one of his most damaging cases came in 1944 when actress Joan Barry sued him for paternity. Barry claimed Chaplin was the father of her daughter and sought child support. The case was complicated by the fact that Chaplin was also facing criminal charges under the Mann Act for allegedly transporting Barry across state lines for immoral purposes. The paternity trial became a circus, with Barry's lawyers painting Chaplin as a predatory figure who took advantage of a young, vulnerable woman. Blood tests actually proved that Chaplin could not be the father. His blood type was incompatible with the child's. However, California law at the time did not accept blood test evidence as conclusive. Despite the scientific proof of his innocence, the jury found Chaplin responsible for the child and ordered him to pay support. The Mann Act charges were eventually dropped, but the damage to Chaplin's image was severe. Combined with his political views, which were seen as too left-leaning during the McCarthy era, these scandals contributed to Chaplin leaving the United States in 1952. He wouldn't return for 20 years. Lana Turner and Johnny Stompanato. Lana Turner was one of Hollywood's biggest stars in the 1950s, but her personal life was turbulent. She became involved with Johnny Stompanato, a mobster connected to gangster Mickey Cohen. Their relationship was volatile and marked by jealousy and violence. On April 4th, 1958, everything came to a tragic end at Turner's Beverly Hills home. Turner's 14-year-old daughter, Cheryl Crane, stabbed Stompanato to death with a kitchen knife. The circumstances were shocking. Cheryl claimed she heard Stompanato threatening her mother and feared for her life, so she grabbed a knife and stabbed him in the abdomen. The case dominated headlines across the country. Was it murder or self-defense? The inquest became a media spectacle, with Turner taking the stand and giving an emotional testimony about Stompanato's abuse and threats. She described how he had terrorized her and how her daughter must have acted to protect her. The coroner's jury ruled the killing a justifiable homicide, determining that Cheryl had acted in defense of her mother. Cheryl was made a ward of the court and sent to her grandmother's custody. Stompanato's family later filed a civil suit against Turner, but it was eventually settled. The case exposed the dark underbelly of Hollywood glamour and raised questions about domestic violence that were rarely discussed publicly in that era. Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was at the peak of his boxing career when he was arrested in 1991 for the rape of Desiree Washington, an 18-year-old Miss Black America contestant. The incident allegedly occurred in Tyson's hotel room in Indianapolis during the pageant. Washington reported the assault immediately, and the case went to trial in 1992. The trial was explosive, pitting Tyson's fame and power against Washington's accusations. Prosecutors presented evidence of Washington's immediate distress after the incident and her consistent account of what happened. Tyson's defense argued the encounter was consensual and attempted to portray Washington as opportunistic. After deliberating for nearly 10 hours, the jury found Tyson guilty of rape and 2 counts of criminal deviant conduct. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison, though he served less than 3. The conviction shocked the sports world and raised important conversations about consent, power, dynamics, and celebrity privilege. Tyson's career was derailed, though he eventually returned to boxing after his release. The case remains controversial, with Tyson maintaining his innocence to this day, while Washington has stated that speaking out cost her dearly but was necessary. Phil Spector revolutionized music production in the 1960s with his wall of sound technique, working with artists like the Ronettes and the Beatles. But on February 3, 2003, actress Lana Clarkson was found shot to death in Spector's California mansion. Spector's driver testified that Spector emerged from the house with a gun, saying, "I think I killed somebody." Spector claimed Clarkson's death was an accidental suicide, that she had grabbed his gun and shot herself. The first trial in 2007 ended in a mistrial with a hung jury, 10-2 for conviction. The prosecution painted Spector as a man with a history of threatening women with guns, calling several witnesses who testified about previous incidents. The defense argued that the forensic evidence was ambiguous and that Clarkson was depressed. The second trial in 2009 resulted in a guilty verdict for second-degree murder. Spector was sentenced to 19 years to life in prison. The case revealed disturbing patterns of behavior and abuse of power by the music legend. Forensic testimony about blood spatter and gunshot residue proved crucial in securing the conviction. Spector died in prison in January 2021 while serving his sentence, never admitting guilt for Clarkson's death. Martha Stewart built an empire on perfection, perfect homes, perfect recipes, perfect entertaining. But in 2004, she was convicted of crimes related to a stock sale that were far from perfect. The case began when Stewart sold nearly 4,000 shares of Imclone Systems stock in December 2001, just before the FDA rejected the company's cancer drug application and the stock price plummeted. Federal investigators suspected insider trading. While Stewart was never actually charged with insider trading, she was charged with conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and making false statements to federal investigators about why she sold the stock. Stewart claimed she had a pre-existing agreement with her broker to sell if the stock dropped below $60 per share. Prosecutors argued this was a fabricated story and that she'd actually received a tip from her broker about the Imclone CEO selling his shares. The trial captivated America, the domestic goddess facing potential prison time. In March 2004, Stewart was found guilty on all counts of obstruction and lying to investigators. She was sentenced to 5 months in prison, 5 months of home confinement, and 2 years of probation. Stewart served her time at a minimum security facility in West Virginia, and remarkably, her brand survived. She returned to rebuild her empire. But the case served as a warning about the consequences of lying to federal investigators, regardless of the underlying alleged crime. Michael Jackson, the king of pop, faced perhaps the most publicized trial of the 2000s when he was charged with child molestation in 2005. Jackson was accused of molesting a 13-year-old cancer survivor at his Neverland ranch, giving the boy alcohol, and conspiring to hold the boy's family captive. The accusations weren't new. Jackson had been investigated for similar allegations in 1993, which he settled out of court for over $20 million. The 2005 trial lasted 5 months and featured testimony from numerous witnesses, including celebrities who defended Jackson and accusers who claimed inappropriate behavior. The prosecution presented evidence of Jackson's relationships with young boys and alleged grooming patterns. The defense attacked the credibility of the accuser's mother, suggesting she was seeking money from Jackson. They also called witnesses who testified they'd never seen inappropriate behavior at Neverland. After 14 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for 7 days before acquitting Jackson on all 14 counts, including the child molestation charges and administering an intoxicating agent. Jackson's fans celebrated outside the courthouse, but the trial took a severe toll on his health, finances, and reputation. He left the United States shortly after and never truly recovered from the ordeal, dying 4 years later in 2009. The case remains divisive, with some believing justice was served and others questioning the verdict. Lindsay Lohan transformed from a promising child star in films like The Parent Trap and Mean Girls into a tabloid fixture due to her numerous legal troubles. Her legal saga began in 2007 with a DUI arrest in May, followed by another DUI arrest in July, where cocaine was found in her car. She was sentenced to 1 day in jail and 10 days of community service. But this was just the beginning. Over the next several years, Lohan became a regular in courtrooms, facing charges for violating probation, theft, and lying to police. In 2010, she was sentenced to 90 days in jail for violating probation, but served only 14 days due to jail overcrowding. A 2011 necklace theft case resulted in another jail sentence, though she served only hours before being released on bail. Then came more probation violations related to a 2012 car accident where she lied to police about who was driving. Throughout this period, Lohan cycled in and out of rehab facilities, with court-ordered treatment becoming part of her sentences. By 2013, she had been arrested at least 6 times and spent about 250 days in rehab. The saga became almost surreal, a young woman with immense talent, unable to escape a destructive pattern. Her legal troubles highlighted issues of celebrity justice, addiction, and the pressures of child stardom. While Lohan has worked to rebuild her career and life in recent years, her legal battles serve as a cautionary tale about the perils of fame at a young age. Britney Spears. Britney Spears' court case wasn't criminal. It was a civil conservatorship that became one of the most controversial legal arrangements in celebrity history. In 2008, following a very public mental health crisis and custody battle, Britney's father, Jamie Spears, was granted conservatorship over her person and estate. Typically, conservatorships are for elderly people or those severely incapacitated. Britney was only 26 years old. For 13 years, Britney had virtually no control over her life, finances, or career, despite continuing to perform and release albums. Her father controlled everything from her finances to her medical care to whether she could get married or have more children. The conservatorship reportedly earned her estate over $600 million, yet she couldn't spend her own money freely. For years, Britney didn't publicly contest the arrangement, but in 2021, she finally spoke in court, delivering explosive testimony about the abuse she'd endured. She revealed she'd been forced to perform against her will, forced to take medication, and forced to have an IUD contraceptive device when she wanted more children. The testimony sparked the Free Britney movement into mainstream consciousness. Celebrities, politicians, and millions of fans rallied for her freedom. In November 2021, a judge finally terminated the conservatorship, giving Britney control of her life for the first time in 13 years. The case raised serious questions about conservatorship abuse, disability rights, and how the legal system can trap people. It remains one of the most shocking examples of how fame and family can collide in devastating ways. Harvey Weinstein. Harvey Weinstein was one of Hollywood's most powerful producers, with his company behind acclaimed films like Pulp Fiction and Shakespeare in Love. But in October 2017, explosive reports in the New York Times and the New Yorker revealed decades of sexual harassment and assault allegations against him. Over 80 women eventually came forward with accusations spanning nearly 4 decades. The allegations ranged from harassment to rape, revealing a pattern of predatory behavior protected by settlements, non-disclosure agreements, and Hollywood's culture of silence. The revelations sparked the MeToo movement, encouraging countless women to share their own stories of sexual misconduct. Weinstein faced criminal charges in New York and California. His New York trial in early 2020 was a watershed moment. Several women testified about assaults, including actress Annabella Sciorra, and 2 women whose cases formed the criminal charges, Mimi Haley and Jessica Mann. Weinstein's defense argued the encounters were consensual and that the women maintained relationships with him afterward. In February 2020, Weinstein was convicted of criminal sexual assault in the 1st degree and rape in the 3rd degree. He was sentenced to 23 years in prison. In 2022, he was also convicted in Los Angeles of rape and sexual assault and sentenced to 16 additional years. The Weinstein case became a defining moment in the fight against sexual harassment and assault, proving that even the most powerful men could face consequences. It exposed systemic enabling of predatory behavior and forever changed how Hollywood and society address sexual misconduct. R. Kelly. R. Kelly was an R&B superstar known for hits like I Believe I Can Fly and Ignition, but rumors about his predatory behavior toward young girls had followed him for decades. In 2002, He was indicted on child pornography charges after a videotape allegedly showing him having sex with an underage girl surfaced. That trial ended in acquittal in 2008, with the alleged victim refusing to testify. But the allegations never stopped. In 2019, the documentary Surviving R. Kelly brought renewed attention to decades of accusations, featuring testimony from multiple women who said Kelly had sexually abused them, often when they were underage. The documentary sparked public outrage and a full investigation. Kelly was arrested in 2019 and faced multiple federal and state charges in New York, Illinois, and Minnesota, including racketeering, sex trafficking, child pornography, and obstruction of justice. The racketeering charge was particularly significant because it framed Kelly's actions as part of a criminal enterprise that recruited women and girls for sexual purposes. His 2021 trial in New York revealed horrifying details of systematic abuse. Witnesses testified that Kelly had maintained control over victims through violence, isolation, and manipulation, often targeting aspiring young singers who trusted him as a mentor. In September 2021, Kelly was found guilty on all 9 counts, including racketeering and violations of the Mann Act. He was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. In 2023, he received an additional 1 year in a separate Chicago case. The conviction represented a major victory for his survivors and for the MeToo movement's expansion into the music industry. Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. The defamation trial between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard became the most watched and discussed celebrity trial in recent memory. Depp and Heard met filming The Rum Diary in 2011, married in 2015, and divorced in 2016, with Heard obtaining a restraining order and accusing Depp of domestic abuse. In 2018, Heard wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post describing herself as a domestic abuse survivor, though she didn't name Depp. Depp sued her for defamation in 2019, claiming the article destroyed his career despite not naming him, arguing that everyone knew she was referring to him. The trial in Fairfax, Virginia, in 2022 was unlike anything previously seen, broadcast live, and dissected on social media in real time. For 6 weeks, the world watched as both actors presented disturbing allegations. Depp's team portrayed Heard as the actual abuser and presented testimony suggesting she'd fabricated abuse claims. Heard's team presented evidence of Depp's drug and alcohol abuse and argued he'd been violent toward her multiple times. Both sides presented photos, audio recordings, text messages, and testimony from friends, employees, and experts. The trial became a cultural phenomenon, with social media largely siding with Depp and creating countless memes and commentary. In June 2022, the jury found that Heard had defamed Depp on all 3 counts and awarded him over $10 million in damages. They also found Depp liable on 1 count of defamation through his lawyer's statements and awarded Heard $2 million. The verdict was seen as a victory for Depp, though both actors' reputations were damaged by the revelations. The case sparked intense debates about domestic violence, believing victims, media trials, and how social media influences justice. Tory Lanez. Canadian rapper Tory Lanez was convicted of shooting fellow artist Megan Thee Stallion in 2020 in a case that divided the hip-hop community and raised questions about how Black women are treated when they report violence. The incident occurred after a party in the Hollywood Hills on July 12, 2020. Megan testified that after an argument in an SUV, Lanez shot at her feet as she walked away, yelling, "Dance." He hit her multiple times, causing significant injuries. Initially, Megan didn't identify Lanez as the shooter, later explaining she feared police violence if she revealed a gun was involved during the incident amid the protests following George Floyd's murder. When she eventually came forward, she faced intense skepticism and online harassment. Many questioned why she'd been in the vehicle with Lanez, why she didn't immediately identify him, and whether she was lying. The scrutiny illustrated how victims, particularly Black women, are often blamed for violence committed against them. Lanez maintained his innocence, though he never testified at trial. His defense suggested Megan's former friend, who was in the vehicle, might have been the shooter. Prosecutors presented forensic evidence showing gunshot residue on Lanez and testimony from witnesses. In December 2022, Lanez was convicted of 3 felonies: assault with a semi-automatic firearm, having a loaded, unregistered firearm in a vehicle, and discharging a firearm with gross negligence. In August 2023, he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Megan's victim impact statement described the trauma and cyberbullying she'd endured. The case highlighted misogyny in hip-hop culture and society's tendency to disbelieve women who report violence, especially Diddy. Sean Diddy Combs, the hip-hop mogul behind Bad Boy Records and a business empire spanning music, fashion, and spirits, faces charges that could end his legendary career. In November 2023, his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, filed a lawsuit alleging years of physical abuse, sexual assault, and sex trafficking. Though that case settled within 24 hours, it opened floodgates. Multiple other women came forward with similar allegations, describing a pattern of violence and sexual misconduct. In March 2024, federal agents raided Diddy's homes in Los Angeles and Miami as part of a sex trafficking investigation. Then, in September 2024, Diddy was arrested in New York and charged with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. The indictment alleges that Diddy ran a criminal enterprise that used his business and employees to carry out crimes, including sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. Prosecutors allege he hosted elaborate sexual performances called freak-offs, where he and others would drug women and coerce them into extended sexual acts, sometimes lasting days, while Diddy watched, recorded, and participated. The indictment claims he used violence, threats, and coercion to control victims and witnesses. During the raids, authorities reportedly seized drugs and over 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant, which prosecutors say were for these freak-offs. Diddy has pleaded not guilty to all charges and denied all allegations. He was denied bail twice, with judges citing him as a flight risk and danger to witnesses. As of late 2024, he remains in federal custody awaiting trial. If convicted, he faces a minimum of 15 years and up to life in prison. The case has drawn comparisons to those of R. Kelly and Harvey Weinstein, powerful entertainment figures whose alleged predatory behavior was enabled by their wealth and influence for decades. Multiple lawsuits continue to be filed against Diddy, with allegations spanning back to the 1990s. His businesses have faced boycotts, and his reputation has been irreparably damaged, regardless of the trial's outcome. The case represents another reckoning in the entertainment industry about abuse of power and systemic protection of powerful men who harm women. Thank you for watching. If you learned anything, let me know by liking the video and comment below on what you would like to see in the future. History never runs out of surprises, and neither do we, so subscribe and join me for the next dive into the archives.